gorgeous souls. This is Quinn Curtis, and you are listening to Joyful Living. And I'm so excited to be back with you today as I have had a little bit of a hiatus. I should have checked the timing from the last episode that I did for you all on my own, but I'm certain it was at least a couple months ago. And so we're back fully, and I'm so excited to share a little bit more of my process and journey with you, as I think it will support and inform and maybe liberate your own. And I'm also excited to share with you a little bit of what's coming and a little bit how the practice and the definition even of joyful living has been expanding and redefining itself in my world. And so without further ado, I'm just so grateful to have you here. I'd love to just invite you to take a really big, deep breath with me as we get started. And if you're listening to this while you're doing something, or you're listening to this on the go, or you're listening to this in a moment of stillness, let's bring all of ourselves to this moment right here. So I'm just picturing maybe some of you are even washing dishes while you're listening, right? So be really present with that. Feel your breath. Feel your hands in the water. Feel those soapy bubbles, right? Or maybe some of you are listening while you're driving. So be feeling the steering wheel and feeling yourself held and supported by the chair and by the car that you're in, right? Or wherever you might be there. Be really present in this moment and just start to feel it more. Bring all of yourself to this moment right here. It's so important that we bring presence to heart and soul subjects, heart and soul sharing. And this is definitely an episode where I am desiring to share my heart and soul with you on a deeper level and really bring you into my world a little bit more in that process. And so there's definitely a part of me that is quaking a little bit with some vulnerability showing up. And there's also a part of me that is feeling very humble and humbled even at the prospect of you offering your time and energy to even hearing my heart and soul, hearing this song today, this sharing. So thank you for gathering here, and thank you for lending your presence and joining me in this conversation that means so much, I believe, to the healing and the joy that needs to happen in our hearts on a deeper level to bring even greater healing and joy into this planet. And so over the past 4 to 6 months. I mean, this year, right now when I'm writing this to you today, this is in 2017 and it's December, so it's the end of the year. Some of you are listening right now and some are in the future. But really interesting moment to really reflect on everything that's been happening in the year. So regardless of where you are, you may even want to just kind of check into your 2017 and what happened in your world, right? And what happened with everything that you were growing and learning through and moving through. And I am just checking really quickly. Looks like August 1st was the last time that I did an episode for Joyful Living that was just me, that didn't have a special guest, but was just kind of my heart and soul. And so, yeah, it's been, goodness, 5 to 6 months since that episode. So a lot has happened. But basically what I'd love to share with this is I'm a major believer of growing our businesses or growing anything that we're doing in healthy respect and integrity for the seasons. And so the season that I was called into really deeply over the past 5 to 6 months was a major season of deepening into my own practice of joyful living. It was definitely a season of bringing myself even more inward and deepening my relationship with the divine on a whole other level. As well as really redefining what joyful living actually looks like in my world. And so as you can imagine, as a lot of these lessons occur, there was a lot of intensity in my world that brought about these lessons, right? And made that more alive and needed in my life. And so one of the big pieces uh, in this learning was I have been majorly taught and tutored in pain in relationships this year. It's been really, really intense. And especially for somebody who considers themselves to be a pretty agreeable, happy, loving person, that, it's very easy for me to see the good in others and to give the benefit of the doubt and to extend kindness, right? And to have, even in the face of that, some really painful, even maybe traumatic in a way, relationship breakdowns that just shook me to my core. And it was so important, and I'm so grateful that this happened in the way that it did, because it helped me find a new layer within my subconscious that had been really attached to what others think about me. And especially being perceived as what I just described a second ago, being perceived as a nice, loving person who sees the best in everybody, who, you know, I'd been really attached to that identity, so much so that I wasn't holding as strong of boundaries as I could have been in some of these situations. And I also just found myself absolutely over giving to the point of exhaustion in these relationships, to try to be what they would need me to be, or to be what they would want me to be, rather than really being in touch with and in tune with having a more harmonious value exchange. And so a lot of these breakdowns happened within friendships, people whom I had considered soul sisters. And then a lot had happened in relationship to family relationships as well. And so both of these were places where prior to this, I had felt a certain level of safety, at least. And then just, had massive breakdown in feeling so unheard, unseen, unloved, misunderstood. It was basically all of my deepest, darkest fears about what people could think of me or how they could respond to me, even with pure intentions, all came true. All came true this year. And it was epic and intense and such a powerful teacher. And definitely valued and needed. And so I wanted to share a little bit of that insight for you, because, there's a big part of me in growing this podcast, or even growing my business pieces, or whatever I'm involved in, that kind of believes that I should be absolutely consistent forever. And there's definitely a part of me that's maybe even afraid, oh my gosh, what if I've lost all my listeners in the meantime of really taking off the past couple months to really go inward and go deeper and take my roots deeper, right? But there's this bigger part that knew if I continued to try to teach to the same level, if I continued to try to, fill your cup, while mine was really, really empty and struggling, that it would not be a service to you, right? And there's a very clear line where it could have very easily turned into ego driving this podcast and driving the content. And it could have very easily turned into even hypocrisy, where I'm telling you, hey, this is how you live joyfully on the outside, right? And you're hearing it and you're thinking, wow, Quinn's really got it all figured out. But then on the inside, not seeing that there's massive grieving and pain and heartache happening behind closed doors. And so it felt very important, especially in service of you, that I honored my own process and honored the path that I was on. And I hoped that through this process, that it would come back and serve you in abundance. And there was a part of me that wondered if the podcast was just complete and we were done and no more discussions and time to let it rest fully. But it has been such joy to me over the past couple weeks as I've felt, oh my goodness, it's coming again. And I can feel the energy gathering around the podcast, that this is meaningful, this is meant to happen, but that it's needed to happen on a deeper level, and it's needed to happen in a little bit of a different way. And so in this past year, I've really come to appreciate and understand that joyful living is about two main things. In my experience, I'll propose this to you, right? And you can test it and see what you think in your world. In my experience, joyful living looks like meaningful connection and wholehearted expression, right? So both of those aspects being so key, and I'll define a little bit about what those each mean. But with meaningful connection, this is where we feel seen and heard and valued by people in our lives, right? So that could be meaningful connection with our partner, with our spouse, with our children, with our parents or siblings, or with our soul sisters, soul brothers, and the people in our world, maybe our neighbors, whomever it might be, right? But that we are continually working to establish and deepen being able to be in meaningful relationship with those around us. And this is very different than just being connected. We're in a world that is hyper connected to each other. As far as we can connect with nearly anybody in seconds and expect a response, right? We've got texting and Facebook messages and Instagram messages and LinkedIn messages and email, and it just goes on and on and on. We've got Snapchats and tweets and all sorts of ways that we are quote unquote connected to each other. But underneath the surface, there is a massive epidemic of loneliness happening in our world right now. And maybe this is resonating with you in your world. It definitely has been a theme that has shown up so strongly in my own world this year, also in feeling like, okay, I have, how many thousands of friends on Facebook, but of those friends, how many do I actually feel safe to feel seen and heard with, right? How many do I actually feel value me on my path rather than judge me and want to correct my path, right? And I say that with a lot of sensitivity because we all just have our own lenses, right? And relationships are hard. Our lenses that we see things through could be, well, this is just how we were raised, or this is just what our religion teaches. And so we've got to, we see and judge others through those lenses, but to recognize it's still a judgment. And that's definitely been a piece of my path this year that has been especially painful to feel that because of some shifts in my religious beliefs over the past few years, which really happened a couple years ago, but I don't know why everything hit the fan this year in maybe people not holding back anymore in their respect or opinions for my path. And it became really, really intense, even to the point where even at my grandmother's funeral, I was, not necessarily named it specifically, but you knew they were talking about me. They said everything but my name, and just kind of being called to repentance. And so even in sharing that with you here, I'm sharing that very gently because I know that there are some of you that even hearing that, you may start to fear or not value what I'm sharing as a result of that lens that you're seeing things through in accordance with your religion. And so I would just invite you that just check in with your heart and soul. Always be mindful. I'm not the expert over anybody else's path, but I am the expert over mine. And I am deeply connected with the divine on my path, right? And the more that I have dove fully and unabashedly into my path, the more it has humbled me to be an even greater respecter of others' paths. That we really never fully know what's going on under the surface. And there's a beautiful quote by Marion Woodman that had I known I'd be sharing this fully before I started, I would have had it fully, but I'll share with you the gist of it, where she's talking about the mother of Jesus, right? Mary. And she said, by all accounts, everyone on the outside would look at Mary being pregnant out of wedlock and her claims that this is God's baby. They would all be looking on the outside and thinking, oh my gosh, she has done such a horrible thing. How could she be doing this? She is on the wrong path. God is going to be so unhappy with her. This is just, this is it for Mary, right? But nobody fully comprehended the divine child that was growing within her. And so here again, I mean, look at Mary. It was even worse in those times, right? Women got stoned for adultery in those days in her culture, right? And they, were cast out and shunned. And to have that big and obvious of something that looked so wrong from what everybody in that religion, everybody in that culture believed a woman could do and could be, and to have no idea of the divine child, the love, the light that was within her womb. We just never know on each other's paths. And so rather than standing in judgment of each other's paths, we can certainly offer, loving, inspired counsel as we feel into, is this really directed by love, or is this directed by ego and fear, right? We always know if we're trying to give advice out of fear that ego is involved, right? So if you're scared for somebody's salvation, or if you're scared for their path, it can be really difficult to give advice that is not rooted in love, right? Or that is rooted in love. It's really hard to do either way. And so the trick here is, with whatever situation that you're in, is to recognize that true love means being with. It's all about our capacity to be with. So if you think about your own connection to the divine, whatever flavor that might be, if that's God or Goddess or Jesus or, whomever, right? Just the universe, whatever that might be. If you think about that all loving and all knowing and kind force, right? Be thinking, what is it that makes it good, right? And I believe that one of those pieces is that if we think of our hardest times in life, we see the greatest love coming from that divine force when that force just loves us through it, right? And how do they love us through it? They listen to our prayers as we're pouring out our hearts, as our hearts are just breaking wide open and tears are rolling down our faces. Maybe we're even getting those really big snotty cries, right? But that divine loving force hears it all and isn't cutting us off and saying, no, okay, let's just make this right. Okay, time to fix this. That's not love. We don't feel that as love, right? And even if the divine is listening and thinking, oh, that could have been done way better, or that wasn't very smart, or gosh, here's the consequence for what you're doing. That divine force is always looking through the eyes of love, of, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that you chose that and that this consequence is so painful. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. I have so much empathy in my heart for this hardship, this struggle, this intensity that you're going through. That is what real love looks like. And so it can help us redefine what meaningful connection and thus joyful living in our relationships actually looks like. Because instead of being in a space of needing to fix, needing to make right, needing to course correct, right? Or being in a space where we just get so overwhelmed by what another is going through that we feel shut down, right? In either of any of these circumstances, to recognize that typically all we're being asked to do most of the time is to stand up and serve love. And we do that by being able to be with, to see, to hear, and to value another, to say, I see you, I hear you, and you matter. No matter what else is going on, no matter what you agree with or disagree with that's happening in their world, they will not shift and change without feeling love. And so we see that love is the great transformational force in the universe. Love is what opens up and brings miracles into situations and into the hearts of people around us, right? And so, if anything, I would say that my heart serves love, at least intends to. That is my religion and my practice, is to show up in full service of love. And a big scripture that really kind of opened up this path to me was seeing, so much religion happening and so much conflict of beliefs and ideas, and even segregation and kinds of pieces like that showing up, and seeing, are we better as a result of this? Are we more love? Are we more love because of knowing exactly what Paul meant in this Bible scripture? Are we more love because we have the only true church? Right? Are we more love because our God is the best God? Like whatever it could be, and seeing, no, we're not more love because of any of those things. You can't prove your way to more love, right? Love is an experience. Love can't be faked. And so just offering that to you, I hope that serves and supports. And in no means am I saying that you need to agree with me or that you need to believe in my path, but I would invite you to see if you can just hold a space for me to have my path and for you to have your path. And as you do so and are in the practice of that, how much more will that open up things in your world to open up even deeper love and connection with the people in your world. I found that even in silly things, seemingly silly things, like with my husband, right? He does things very different than I would do, or each of my kids do things very differently than I would do. And so even if it's not a matter of religion or salvation, even if it's a matter of, how they wash the dishes, or if they put away their clothes, or if they just drop things on the floor, or how they handle certain situations, right? My capacity to see them still and hear them still and value them still is what brings harmony in our relationship. It brings real love. And then we don't get into this push and pull kind of resistance pattern that really limits true connection and our true capacity to have meaningful connection. And this is the kind of connection that when you're on your deathbed, that you are able to stand in a space of, I came, I loved. My life is rich and abundant with my treasures of relationships, of these amazing people in my world that I got to spend my life with. What a treasure it was, right? Rather than where we can get stuck a lot of times in our lives, which is very much in intensity with our relationships, especially with those who we're closest to. So feel into that. Joyful living is meaningful connection and wholehearted expression. So looking into the wholehearted expression piece, this is where I'm feeling an even greater call, and I actually have been getting into action into this over the past 6 months, to really lean into what I feel is my heart and soul work, what I came to give to this planet, and that is to help souls who want to make a bigger difference here in the world, who are purpose-driven and who are entrepreneurs and creators, who are trying to bring more of their heart and soul calling, their song out into the world, and not sure how. And I love bringing my genius zones of supporting people through transitions and breakthroughs, even soul midwifing these heart and soul projects out of them to bring them into the world and into manifestation, as well as to be able to support them in a really soulful, magnetic, delicious brand that really resonates and has a high vibration that matches and aligns and supports the work that they're doing, so that their work can be seen and valued more easily and heard more easily. It's kind of like the difference between Cinderella showing up to the ball in rags versus the ball gown, right? And how, we're just in a world where it's tricky. We have so many filters where we're trying to see, is this safe? Is this professional? Is this something I can trust? Is this something that's going to work for me and help me? And when we bring that level of soulful branding into the picture, it makes such a massive difference in us being able to take our businesses to the next level and being able for it to touch hearts and minds like it maybe wouldn't have otherwise, which is also this massive process of us stepping more into, standing in our messages and in our truth and singing that song we were born to sing and blooming, right? All of those pieces. And so I've been really bringing some of my absolute heart and soul projects into the world in support of that, including my soul brand camp that you can find out more information on my website, quincurtis.com, as well as my premium, fabulous, amazing program, In Flow and On Fire. And so those are really fabulous supports if that's something that you're looking into. And so this really, in sharing these pieces with you today, I wanted to share a little bit of background information so that you could understand and see where we're going with this podcast. So over the next year, my intention is to really focus in on those two categories primarily, on joyful living being meaningful connection and wholehearted expression. And so you'll see that there are going to be topics and special guests coming in that relate to each of those subjects, and some you may resonate with and some you won't, and that's okay. So I would invite you to just enjoy the buffet and to select and partake of the things that resonate with you and will support you, that you can feel a heart and soul connection with. And that may, for some of you, be all of them, right? So just know that that's coming. And that another piece that is really near and dear to my heart is having the skills needed to live joyfully, right? The skills to be able to connect, right? Just even that little mind shift that I was just sharing with you a minute ago about what love actually is and how we feel it is so powerful. That love is actually just as simple as I hear you, I see you, I value you. And then to actually be able to hear or feel love, we have to be able to let in, oh, they see me, or they hear me, or they value me, right? Each are flavors, and sometimes we get all three together. Sometimes we just get one of them, but it makes such a difference in us expanding our capacity to receive love, which then helps us to keep our own tanks or buckets full so that we actually have more to give rather than running on empty all the time. Okay, so that will be another common theme that you can expect to continue. That has been a theme of the past episodes, but you can definitely expect that to continue so that you're able to have the skill set and any tools, of course, that we find along the way that are supportive to that. I'll be bringing you into there. But the real skill set and tool set and mindset, if you will, to bring all those together for you to really be able to bring more aliveness into your life, more heart and soul integrity, right? Living in alignment with your heart and soul, and thus more joyful living with that deep, meaningful connection and wholehearted expression. So this is really, based in my passion for more dreams coming true over the next year, for more people stepping into singing their song, for more people having greater joy in their homes and joy with these close relationships, these people we love so much but can drive us crazy, right? And bring out the crazy in us, that you have support and skills to be able to remain in the practice of joyful living so that those relationships can flow better. I really would love to speak to you just for a moment that when I first started this podcast, joyful living was very much a struggle for me. And that's why I started the podcast is because I had learned a lot, right? And so I was sharing what I had learned, but I also wanted to do the podcast to keep me accountable, to continue to learn and take this path and to continue to grow in this way and understand joyful living better. And so the flavor of the podcast in the beginning was very much, out of curiosity. What is joyful living? What's really working in people's lives? And what skills are really needed and useful? But as this has evolved for me, just miracles have happened in my world. Even in the midst of so much intensity this year, dreams have been coming true. joyful living has been happening, I have had to deepen my roots and really get into my practice of joyful living at times to have joy. But it's pretty dang miraculous. Even my husband was commenting on this in just seeing the amount of hard things that we've been walking through over the past year, and seeing how they didn't take us out, right? Because we're in this practice. We live this way. This is our intention. We live joyfully. We apply these practices and skills. And as such, we can handle and manage these things without repressing them and saying, eating them away or avoiding them or getting into massive distraction and not being in them. And by doing so, as we've gone through these hard things or even through the good things, our connection with each other just in our own home has deepened to a level that I never dreamed would have been possible. Where clearly I have an epic marriage now. And truthfully, even a year or two ago, I couldn't have said that. Could have said, we get along and we love each other. We're best friends, but I don't know that our relationship is epic. It really has shifted into an epic place as we've applied these principles and practices. Another piece for us is that our relationship with our kids has deepened, all of our 5 children, to where I feel they feel so much more nurtured and absolutely they're in their own growing processes, and there is intensity with that, but we are not, creating major tension or making anything more insane than it would otherwise be as you're navigating growth and hormones and how to be kind to each other and how to not drive each other crazy, right? But we're bouncing through it and we're laughing through it and we're having more fun together and we're trusting each other more. And we're sharing more deeply from our hearts and souls, and we're feeling, all of us, more seen and heard and valued within our own home. And it's changing our family demographics so that there really is so much less intensity in our home that it's just dramatic. I can't even believe it. And that's not saying that it's fixed, right? Or that we've arrived anywhere, but I just want to give you a taste so that you can see that anything that I'm sharing on this podcast or anything that's coming in through here now, it feels like I have, I've found these treasures, and I'm so overjoyed and excited to continue to share them with you because they have made such a massive difference and impact in my family's life and my own personal life. And so I would hope and I would pray that they will also support you abundantly and massively in your own practices and processes. And many of those things we have been sharing, and then we're just going to be adding new layers of depth and new nuances and new pieces as well along the way also. Another final kind of yummy piece that's been happening is that we are, aside from just greater harmony in our home and peace and joy and connection there, is that we are really seeing some really fun, fabulous things happen in our business. Like crazy fun things. And this is where a lot of those inflow, on fire kinds of practices have come from that I haven't necessarily spoken to very much on the podcast, but I would love to highlight more, especially as we go into our next year of doing the podcast and bringing you these episodes. And so it's just so good, so exciting. So I hope that that's an exciting thought too as well. And if you just can't wait for more episodes and just want to get closer to where that action is happening, you'll definitely want to check out my free Soulful Business and Branding Facebook group, where there's some of that magic happening there, and then where you'll definitely stay updated on all the latest and greatest. And then I'll be bringing it here to you as well in different flavors and different timing and different way, as well as different levels. So I hope that this is all joyful and exciting to you. But most of all, I hope that as you're listening, you're really sensing and appreciating the value of evolution, the value of allowing ourselves the space and capacity to grow and let things change and adjust, and allowing yourself the maybe even permission to let something in your life have a season of rest to go back into that womb of creation and being unattached with it, of saying, I really don't know what this is meant to be moving forward, but I'm going to let it rest. I'm not going to force it and make it happen. I'm going to, I'm going to stand in peace and trust in the process and see, right? And allowing it to come back, because I'm feeling, had I just kept giving those episodes and then shifted you into this place now where we're moving into, it would have been a little bit of whiplash, right? It would have, and not that this is a significant difference, but I know some of you are very sensitive to the shift in energy of this show. And so, it would have been a lot more intense. It's just not how nature works anyways, necessarily. Like, this was a big shift, a big evolution of deepening these practices, of deepening the intention for this show and your experience with it. And in doing so, it needed that season of winter to really let those roots dive deeper, to draw the energy more inward, to have it collect and gather and bring a lot of energy together to be able to bring this to life on a whole other level. So I hope that is exciting to you as you look at some of the pieces in your world that maybe are calling for a season of rest and winter. So meanwhile, I am just loving you all so dearly. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to connect with you, and I do not take this honor or this opportunity lightly. And so thank you for your trust in me and in this process and in this show. And I look forward to continuing to serve you and show up in support of your dreams, your heart and soul, your ways that you want to make a bigger difference, your ways that you want to more deeply connect with the people you love so much in the world, so that you can make something so wonderful and joyful out of this one great, fabulous life that you have right here, right now. And that's my hope. And I am loving you all dearly and will be excited to talk to you again very soon. And in the end, only love will last. You've been listening to Joyful Living. If you haven't already done so, be sure to email me at quinn@joyfullivingmovement.com so I can send you our yummy Joyful Living welcome package filled with lots of awesomeness, including access to our private Joyful Living network. I read every email from my listeners and would love to hear from you. Also, be sure to leave a review on iTunes, and most importantly, have a joy-filled day.